Welcome to Your Favorite Self with me, Sophia Hyde. I'm on a mission to change the conversation in the personal growth space to one that gives you back all the power. Gone are the days of pursuing things that other people told us to value. The beauty of the word favorite is that it means you have full ownership to declare what you want. This is a space for conversations centered around how to birth those desires that are sitting just beneath the surface. As a certified master life coach, I'm here to help you get tangible results and transformation. So, let's get to work. Hi, welcome back for episode 3. I'm so grateful you guys are here. Okay, this episode is going to be filled with so many great nuggets. This is one that you will probably want to save and revisit every time you go to set some new goals or feel stuck in a goal. Anytime you're setting your sights on something you want to change or shift. This is one of those cases where today you're going to get out of this message what you need today. But if you come back and listen on another day, you will walk away with completely different nuggets. So hold on tight. I'm going to drop so much gold for you guys. If you can take notes, it will serve you. If you can walk away from this episode with just one nugget, like one sentence that you feel was your like aha moment, if you find an aha moment for you today, if something clicks, I want you to take that sentence, write it on an index card, put it on a Post-it note, and place it somewhere you're going to see every day. Because I'm going to be throwing so many great little thoughts that are just truth bombs over and over and over again. And if something is resonating with you, and I finally say it in the way you needed to hear it, then I want you to write it down and hold on to it. Because these concepts, they're everything. This is the game changer, okay? So what are we talking about today? Well, as you can see in the title, today we're going to talk about why so many people get stuck in their goals. Why don't they achieve the goals they set? What's the reason? I'm going to use one word, but promise me you're going to stick here till the end, because there's so much more than just this one word. The answer is habits. Oh, yes, somebody out there right now is thinking, oh, here we go, another person talking about habits. That's what everybody's talking about now is habits. Oh, no. There is a reason there are so many books about habits. There is a reason there are so many conversations about habits. It's because this is where the gold is. So for the rest of this episode, I am going to deep dive with you guys on all the things there is to know about habits. But we're going to simplify it. And my goal for you, my intention is that by the end of this episode, you will have the clarity that you need to decide your next action based on your unique circumstances with your unique desires and priorities and goals and what your wheel looks like. So that is what I am hoping comes out of this, is that you will have the aha moment you need. Some sentence will click for you and you're going to post some quote somewhere where you're going to see it all the time. And then you're going to know the next habit to work on, and you're going to have more clarity around what that's going to look like for you. Okay. If I did my job well, that is the results I'm hoping for. But I am going to get into the weeds again today. I know. We have been so in the weeds, guys. We have been in the weeds of the thought wheel and the weeds of the favorite wheel. And today we're going to get deep into the weeds of the habits. And it's because this is where the magic sauce is, guys. There's so much power here. Okay. So let me start by telling you just like a little glimpse of my story. So I go into way more detail of this in my book that comes out later this year. But essentially, prior to 2011, I lived in hustle culture and worked my body into the ground and had my priorities upside down. And then in 2011, I hit a breaking point, and that was like my fork in the road moment. And my personal growth and development journey and transformation and birthing my favorite self. I saw my favorite self in 2011, but I was not her. It took me like a decade to manifest her into the life. I just slowly became more and more and more of her over a period of a decade. But in 2011 is when I finally had the clarity that what I was doing wasn't going to work, and that I had to make some changes. And I share that with you to say that that's really when the journey started. I was introduced that year to the concept of, writing, setting your priority, making a list of all your priorities and what do you want them to look like, and pick a habit inside of each one and pick 3 habits and those. So then if you have 7 priorities and 3 habits in each side of each one, then that's 21 goals, and those goals are your habits. And so I actually did that. I did that year. I still recommend that for people. It's a great exercise, but it didn't have the powerful transformation that it could have if I knew everything I know now. So fast forward 5 years, I successfully made some changes in my life. I successfully achieved some of my goals. But then 2011 was the first year I made a vision board. It was the first year I set some long-term goals, some short-term goals, and really went into gear to accomplish them. I got some of them done in 2011 and 2012 and 2013. And then 2013, 14, 15, and then again in 2016, I kept writing down the same goals. That's a great, excellent recipe for burnout. To start the beginning of every year believing this will be the year I finally hit these exact same goals. And then you write them down again and again and again. And finally, by 2016, I thought to myself, gosh, this is the definition of an idiot, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. This is not working out for me. I am really tired of setting the same goals over and over and over again. And I know I'm an intelligent person. I don't think I'm this stupid. So what is wrong? And at this point, I hadn't read any books about habits, but there was 2 quotes I had heard, literally just a simple quote. And one was, the life you're living today is a reflection of the habits you've had up to this point. And when I heard that, I was like, holy shit. I've got a lot of bad habits. In all the areas I'm stuck, I've got bad habits in. Ouch, that one hurt. It was an incredible mirror to have to look at. Oh my gosh, I know I have all these bad habits, but to have to acknowledge that they are the reason that there are so many parts about my life that I don't like right now, it's a pit in the stomach, right? So that was a little bit of a shift. And then the other one was the John Maxwell quote, if you want to change your life, change something that you do every day. The secret to your success is found in your daily routine. Or found in the things you do every day, something like that. That quote, those 2 things, I heard them around the same time. I had probably heard them before, right? Let's be real. But that concept, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. For whatever reason, when I heard them in that season of my life, it finally clicked for me that if I wanted to get unstuck, I needed to focus on my habits. And so I started looking at the things I was doing that weren't working. One by one, over the course of the next few years, my life from 2016 to 2019, in those 3 years, I changed almost every single habit in my life. I wish I was exaggerating, but I changed everything. From my routines to my work structure, to putting the way we put our daughter on schedules, to how I pick up my house, to probably the most memorable one for me is that I used to lose my keys. I would spend 15 minutes of every single day trying to find where I left my keys. But there's the simple habit of my keys can only have one place to belong. I will walk in the door and I will put them on a hook, and they cannot belong anywhere else. Like that little thing. It changed my life, right? Because now I get 15 minutes back because I'm no longer chasing keys every single day. And also, I have less stress, right? Because when I can't find my keys, I have cortisol rushing through my body. And then it also creates stress for other people, right? This bad habit of mine of losing my keys, which, by the way, fast forward to age 36, when I got diagnosed with ADHD, that was one of the questions they asked me. Do you regularly lose your keys? And I was like, for the first 9 years of my marriage, my husband had to help me find my keys every day until 9 years in, he said to me one day, I'm not doing this anymore. I will no longer help you find your keys. I am drilling this hook to the wall that you see as soon as you walk in the door, and you will hang your keys here. And if you do not, it's no longer my problem. This is your problem. I will not spend 15 minutes of my life every day anymore helping you find your keys. So the habit eventually I created the habit of I walk in the door, I put the keys there, and I no longer have to live with that. Shout out to my friend Sam. When I say that like your bad habits affect other people too, one time there was a group of us flying to a conference in Vegas, and I had to bring my 5-month-old daughter because I was still breastfeeding. And I had lost my keys at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was by myself. I think Brandon was traveling, and I was late to the airport, but needed to do long-term check-in, needed to get a baby, needed to do whatever. And my friend Sam jumped in to the car and almost missed the flight because I got to the airport so late because I had spent 30 minutes trying to find my lost keys that it turns out I had proactively put into the diaper bag for some reason. But I tell you that story to say that the simplest things, these little tiny stressors, when we have bad habits in place, the people in our lives get affected by them too. Whether that's because the bad habits cause us to run late, or it causes us to have a bad attitude, or it causes us to not have enough energy, or it causes us to snap at our kids or our family, or to all of the things. When we don't get enough sleep, we're cranky to be around. Like all these things that are bad habits in our lives, they don't just affect us, they affect everybody that we interact with. So it's really important for us to start looking at them. So what do we do? Okay, so now we're saying your goals are attached to habits. We've established this, right? I'm going to walk you through some really helpful exercises for how to set better habits. But to fast forward to the end of that story, I transformed everything. It wasn't just about the keys, right? It's now how everything in my house is organized. It is how I get ready in the morning, how I go to bed at night. My finances, all 10 spokes on my wheel, I have transformed all of them by picking better habits. And my life did a 180 in a 3-year period of time by changing one habit after another. That was the thing that finally got me unstuck, that finally got me into movement. It was one habit after another. So there's a great quote by one of my mentors. It was Tom Ziegler. He was the coach training that I went through at the beginning when I first started coaching. And he wrote a book called Choose to Win. It's essentially about the 7 spokes. They have a spoke with 7. I now use 10, but they have 7 spokes. And essentially the premise of the book is focus on your 7 spokes and find habits inside each one of them to change. And that's how you're going to improve your life, right? And he goes into like super deep detail on some really great habit ideas if you ever want to read that book. But this quote that he says is, the fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good habits. I'm going to say that one more time. The fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good habits. Now, why this quote is so meaningful is because we spend a lot of energy on what are the great habits that we should be forming, and we try to like birth them out of nothing. And then over here, we're like, these are the bad habits I shouldn't do anymore. And how do I stop doing them? And we try to stop these bad behaviors. But start looking in your life for exchanges, because exchanges are so much easier. What is one bad habit I can exchange for a good habit? And then the transition is easier. So one of my bad habits I shared with you guys on the last episode is like my 10 p.m. ice cream. Well, sometimes I just really want like something sweet and cold at night, especially if my husband and I are going to like sit down and watch like some TV together. It just feels so pleasurable to me. So many years ago, a girlfriend told me that she had replaced ice cream with frozen dark cherries. Shout out to Publix and the Floridians listening to this podcast. But they sell these bag of frozen dark cherries. And if you let them thaw, this is my magic trick, okay? Let the berries thaw for like 15 minutes. And they start leaking that juice. You can even leave them out for 20 or 30 minutes. And then they're still cold, but they have this like runny, sweet juice that comes out of them. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And sometimes I'll just take a spoonful of almond butter, throw it on top, and mix it in together. Oh my gosh, divine. I don't need ice cream. Like there's no reason, because these dark cherries sometimes with a little bit of almond butter, it hits the sweet tooth. It's got all those pleasure centers. It feels cold. And now I'm sitting on the TV. So the habit is I sit on the couch with my husband and I watch TV and I eat something cold and sweet. But that little exchange of let me try some frozen fruit instead of some ice cream is a much healthier choice, right? And so sometimes I just want you to like think about your life, and are there little swaps you can make? Instead of putting my keys anywhere in the house, I'm going to always hang them in the exact same spot, right? You're just replacing a bad habit with a good habit. Okay, so that's one idea. Two more quotes that I love about habits. One is good habits are just good choices made over and over again, right? You're just making good choices in your life. And then this is such a great quote. First, forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you whether you are inspired or not. That's a quote by Octavia Butler. So I want to spend a minute on this one because there's a lot of attention put on feeling inspired and feeling motivated. I am sure at some point in my life I'm going to be considered like a motivational speaker, but I really hope that somebody can help me think of a much better title than that, because my goal is not to just inspire or motivate people. When I get contacted for gigs, I tell them that this is only going to work if they have access to worksheets and a pen and somewhere to write, because I need them to pull the stuff out from inside of them. Where I'm going to have questions, they're going to need a challenge, they're going to have to like look inside and figure some stuff out. I'm not just going to talk to people, because just inspiring and motivating, like, man, that wears off quickly. Think about how inspired people are at the beginning of the year, and they're so motivated to like achieve these goals, and they join the gym, or they buy a Peloton, or they get an exercise like treadmill or bike or whatever the thing is. They order all the cute new outfits from Amazon that they want, or they go shopping. And then it wanes, and they're not as excited. And how many times are they using it after it comes in, right? Because the motivation, the inspiration, it only lasts so long. So what you really need is a habit you're going to stick with. And we're going to spend a lot of time today on how do you actually get the habits to stick? How do you get them to stay? How do you get them to be consistent? There is a science to this, and I'm going to teach it to you. I'm going to teach you the science of how to set successful habits that will actually stick and stay in your life. It can be done, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. But first, I want you to purge this idea that motivation is what you need. There are going to be days that you are not motivated. Like whatever the habit is, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, getting enough exercise, managing your budget. I'm just trying to think of really common ones that everybody can relate to. I don't know, so many. All of these things, there are going to be days that you just don't feel like it. You're not inspired. You're not in the mood. you don't want to, but if you're committed to the habit and it's the right habit, you'll execute anyway. That is the sweet spot. And that's what I want to help you find. So before we start looking at which specific habit is the right one, I want to go over a general concept of how I teach people to use habits in their life. If you've already listened to episode 1 and you've done your favorite wheel exercise, then you should have 10 spokes that you've identified, 10 definitions of what your favorite life, your life out of 10 in each one of those spokes looks like. So once you have your 10 definitions in your 10 spokes, you're going to go through and reflect on what are some good habits that would support this area. And for the first round, the first time you go through, just brain dump the general stuff. So let's go to self-care. You might say getting enough sleep, drinking enough water. I'm trying to think of other great self-care habits. Meditation, time alone by myself, a thing that you love doing that brings you joy. I don't know. All these things, just write them down. Like this would be a healthy habit for me in this spoke. Just like write down them at a generic level, okay? And you're going to do this for all your spokes. So you go through and you've got 10 spokes and you've identified just kind of whatever habits come to mind that might help you in that area, okay? Next, you're going to go through those spokes and reflect on the question, which spoke needs the most intention from me right now? And is there any potential for a domino effect from these habits you've kind of brain dumped, okay? So look at those spokes and think to yourself, okay, if I just focus on this one thing, will a lot of my life improve? I'll give you a few examples that have come up from people that I've worked with. For sure, self-care and mental spoke. So getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, like that can overflow into lots of different areas. In the mind spoke, taking care of your brain, stuff like sleep and water apply there too, but also exercise, beginning your day by moving your body. It benefits your brain. It puts you in a good mood. It gives you the stamina and the energy to make it through the rest of the day. And by the way, it also helps you get higher quality sleep. And so, those might be things that you can say, well, if I do this one thing here, it's going to have this effect in all these different areas. But your life might be different. I recently had someone attend one of my workshops and tell me that after she heard me speak, she saw that her lowest spoke was her relationship, and she reflected on how she has known for a long time that this guy was taking and not giving and really not a right fit for her. And probably not the healthiest of relationships, but she had not realized how the fact that it wasn't a really good relationship was hindering the rest of her life. And she said she walked out of the ballroom where this workshop was happening into her hotel room, got on the phone and broke up with him, and then went back to the event. Like, that's a big deal. That's an example of another spoke where one decision can impact all of the other spokes. And so your life and what's going on. So ask yourself, is there one spoke that if I give this one some intention, other areas will improve? Can this spoke and this habit have a domino effect on other areas of my life? One of my favorites is my morning walk, which I'll talk more about that later, but it has now grown into lots of different forms of exercise. But for a year and a half, it was almost always walking. Now it's many different forms of movement. But when I start my day with that walk, it is hitting on so many different spokes. It is self-care because I've got time alone with my thoughts. It is helping my mind spoke because my brain thinks better and clearer. It is helping my body spoke because I'm getting my heart rate up, and the place I like to work out, the park I like to walk in has exercise equipment, so I can work a lot of different muscle groups and parts of my body and awesome stuff like that. It helps. It can help my family and my relationship because if I have taken the time to do that, then I'm nicer to be around the rest of the day. It helps my business because I think clear. So when my brain is working better, I'm going to make better decisions. I'm going to have more clarity in my decisions. There's this like trickle down effect when I take care of myself and my body and my brain. It overflows to all these other areas. So think about that. What can have a domino effect? Okay, so now you've picked your spoke. You've looked at a habit. So what habit in that spoke could help me most? And then ask yourself, does anything else need to change to make this possible? We're going to dive more deeply into this in a minute when I get into a specific system. But I just want you to think about that because sometimes other factors have to be in place. Like, in order for me to go to bed on time, I have to also take my medicine on time, and I have to also, put my kids to bed on time. I have to get into my comfy clothes. I have to wind my brain down. I have to shut my phone off. Like all of these other things have to happen in order for my brain to shut down at the time I want it to do and for me to fall asleep at the time that I want to fall asleep. I can't just say I'm going to go to bed on time. All these other things have to change before that. And lastly, as we're approaching and about to move into this system, I want you to think about creating habits as an experiment. So let me ask you this. How many days do you think it takes to form a new habit? When I ask that in a group setting, people will throw out numbers like 21 days, 90 days, 30 days, 60 days. I've heard all sorts of numbers. Do you know what my answer is to that? It doesn't matter. There's not a number. There is no number. Some habits are really easy to form. You're gonna be able to stack it with something else you're already doing, and ta-da, it's like done in a day. If you get a new job in a new city, overnight, you're gonna have a new habit of driving to that city every single morning, right? Like, so some habits are one decision. Other habits are harder. And so you have to keep trying and keep experimenting and keep dabbling and figure out when you miss it. You just observe it. You're like, oh man, I missed the habit today. Well, what did I not have in place? How can I learn from this? You have to fail 100 times before you can really realize and figure out and learn and discover why you're failing. And then you adjust until you finally find the right system that will help that habit stick. And that might take you 30 days. It might take you 90 days. There are really challenging ones I have faced that have taken me like 6 months. But I've had really easy ones that have taken me 2 or 3 days because I'm like, oh, if I just add this into this flow I'm already doing, it's no big deal. There is no number. You just have to experiment with it. Another tip that I want to leave you with is that when you're setting a habit, I don't recommend trying to tackle too many at a time. So when I do this exercise with my clients and they go through all 10 spokes and then they pick habits that they want to develop in all 10 of their spokes, if they pick 1, 2, or 3 per spoke, let's say they picked 3 per spoke, they might have written down on a piece of paper 30 habits. If we get off that coaching call and I send them with a game plan to start implementing 30 habits, guess how many are going to actually stick? 0. They're going to hit overwhelm. You can't focus on that many things all at the same time. My recommendation is 1 at a time. 1 at a time. Just focus on this one, give it your energy, figure out everything in your life that has to shift around to make this one stick, and then move on to the next. And then move things around and then move on to the next. Sometimes if they're small enough, you might be able to try 2 or 3 at the same time. But I've not seen a situation where you can stick more than 3 habits at the same time, with the exception of a major life change. And I want to pause on this for a second because it is actually a really big deal. If you get a new job, if you get laid off from a job, if you move to a new city, if you move to a new house, when you have these major transitions, they are an incredible opportunity, an invitation to set dozens of new habits all at the same time because the entire routine's been disrupted. I'll give you an example. When we went into shutdown mode, I understood this concept and I was trying to tell people, this is an invitation. Do not just fall into whatever, right? So when everybody is now in lockdown at home, you could just fall into habits, or you could say, all right, we are now in lockdown at home. Let's decide the new habits intentionally, because either way, this is all going to be new and different. And so you can just accidentally fall into habits. You might end up with a couple good ones. You're probably going to end up with a whole bunch of bad ones. Or you can say, what do I want this to look like? So if you get a new job and it has this commute, what is your breakfast going to look like? What time are you going to leave the house? What are you going to listen to when you're driving? What is, all of these new things that are going to be shifting and changing, you're just going to haphazardly fall into stuff. When you have this transition, or if you, when you move into a new house, like this might happen too. When you have these transition moments, a lot of stuff is going to happen by accident. And this is a time when many bad habits can slip in that you are then later going to have to begrudgingly break one at a time. Or you can see this transition opportunity and say, oh my gosh, this is an invitation. I am about to have to set 30 new habits all at the same time. I'm going to choose them intentionally. Okay, with this new job, this is the kind of breakfast I'm going to eat. This is the time I'm going to leave. This is what I'm going to listen to in the car. This is how I'm going to, this is who I'm going to call on the way home. This is when I'm going to get my exercise routine in, because I can't do it when I used to do it now. Like, all of the stuff you can shift it all at the same time. That's one of the rare times that I would tell someone that it's totally appropriate to try to tackle more than 3 habits at once. A major life transition time is a great time to take on more than 3. But for the rest of you who are not in the middle of a major life transition, one is fantastic. Maybe up to 3 if they're all like small and they don't overwhelm you. Okay. So in that example where the person took their 10 spokes and they identified habits that would help them get there, my recommendation would be, over the course of a year, you're going to try to implement these, but you're going to do them one at a time. Let's say you took on 12 habits. You would be, if I were to say, go do 12 new habits, you try to take them all at the same time, you would likely fail at all 12 of them by the end of January if you tried to do them all at the same time. But if you said, I'm going to do 1 new habit a month for the next year, you would probably finish the year with 12 new habits. So think about it like that. I'm not going to do them all at once. I'm going to do them one at a time. And over time, I will eventually get to them all when I figure out how long each one of them is going to take to stick. Okay, that's part of this treating it like an experiment. We really don't know how long it's going to take you to form this habit, and just be okay with the journey. You're here for the ride, no matter how long it takes. Okay, what I want to spend the rest of this episode on is talking about a specific approach to habit setting. Now, I mentioned that I had not read back in at the point of 2016, I had not really read a lot about habits. But the first book that I did read was called The Power of Habit. And I love to get one new nugget out of a book. And that particular book, the biggest nugget I got was to discover your cornerstone habit, that there's one habit that if you change this thing, then everything else will change. There was a story of a guy who was trying to lose weight and he couldn't figure out like how to stop eating these cookies, and it was like at work, and he finally figured out that the cornerstone habit was that every single day he was getting up to go walk around the office, and there was these cookies that were offered, and that was like the thing, the eating, like getting up to do the walk at that time with those cookies right there was the thing that was sending him downhill. And he just had to change the cookie thing. And then 10 different things worked themselves out. And I forget because I'm so many years removed from that book, but he ended up figuring out how to like not eat that cookie anymore at that time of day. And it helped him with his weight loss goals. So the point is, you're looking for like one habit that can have a domino effect on other things. There's other great books. I know Atomic Habits is really popular and a million people love it and it's great. And that's awesome if you love it. But my personal favorite is Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. Highly recommend it. If you do the audiobook version, it's 11 hours. That's a lot. But I'm going to give you the bullet points today. And if you love the science, if you love the why, if you want to know the nitty gritty, this guy who wrote it, it's a college professor. I'm pretty sure it was Stanford University that he teaches at. And I think he studied like 40,000 people and used, and this system worked for them like 40,000 times. This was the recipe for setting new habits. And I did not discover this book until the end of 2021. By this time, I was 5 years deep into making new habits. The reason it became my favorite book was because I felt like when I read it, it was a hell yes, hallelujah. This is what I have been saying. This is what I've been doing. This is what I have been teaching. And it turns out that some college professor somewhere wrote a book and gave all of the science for why what I was seeing the results for, like this is the science behind why it was actually working. So that's why his book is my favorite, because it just felt like a giant hell yes, hallelujah to me. I have a million examples of how what he teaches is what I did and that is what actually worked. So here are his rules. In order to set your habits up for success, you want to run them through these filters. Is it positive? Do not have any shoulds. Make it a tiny behavior. Have a prompt. Celebrate and consider your environment. That's like the bullet points of his book. Now, I want to dive deeper into these because there is so much truth here. So first of all, positive means, is it fun? Because if you don't want to do it, you're not going to. So let's go through, because exercise is just such a great example. Let's go through an example of when I did something that was not fun. I know a lot of people who think CrossFit is so much fun. So I tried it because it was supposed to be fun and I get FOMO. So I wanted to try it out and I suffered through it for 6 months. I will say I'm grateful for it because I do believe that those coaches taught me so much about form and understanding my body. And I did get stronger and I did like the feeling of being stronger. But I never got to the point where I could get in my car and be like, woohoo, I'm so excited to go. And I'm looking forward to it. Like I never got there. So finally, after 6 months of just like forcing myself and gritting my way through it, I finally said, I don't think this is for me. And I went back to my yoga studio membership. Because then when I drive to the yoga studio, I am just in full joy and full pleasure. And I just feel like, man, this is like a vacation. This is like an invitation to take a vacation from my life for 1 hour. I'm going to check out, but I do get stronger and I do get healthier. And it is still good movement for me. And I really look forward to this. And so if your habit is something you are dreading or it feels like a punishment, it's not going to stick. So look for habits that you find fun. And if you don't find them fun, then find a way to make it fun. On a coaching call that I had this week, I have a client who is studying for this big test. She has to spend like months and months and months on it. And she's paid all this money for study groups and curriculum and all this stuff to take this big test for credentials in her industry. And I asked her if she was having dread, and she was like, of course I am. Like, there's not much exciting about, let me go sit on this computer with this software I've paid for to look forward to doing. And I said, we got to turn this into a habit. We got to run this through this model. First steps first, if you can't find a way to make this fun, you're probably not going to follow through with it. And we got to look at this as a habit. It's the habit of you showing up to study. So when are you going to study? Where are you going to study? But then let's make this fun. And we talked about all sorts of ways to add pleasure to it. And my recommendation was to her was to look at all 5 of the senses. So what are you physically feeling? Well, she had been studying at her desk. So we talked about moving somewhere comfortable, putting on comfy clothes so that you think about like snuggling up in your environment. Like put yourself in an environment you want to be in. So that's like what it feels like. Your scent. Put on like a smell that you love or your favorite essential oils. Taste. Do you have a favorite warm beverage or like the drink you love to drink? So you can be like, oh yeah, it is time for me. I got my yummy snacks. I've got my yummy drinks. See, touch. Oh, sound. One of the things I did when I had to like drudge through writing my book, which is just a very similar experience. I found that some of my favorite artists, I found music by Pink and by Bruno Mars, where they took the lyrics out and it's just the piano accompaniment to that music. Because if I have lyrics, I get distracted, but if it's just the music, I don't. And so I pretty much wrote my entire book to the Pink soundtrack of just her, like somebody playing a piano music to her music. Oh my gosh, I loved it. It like made me so happy every time I would hear it come on. I love this music. So I would have my robe and my oils and my drink and my snacks and my music. It's like I got all of the senses in high pleasure, and then okay, now let's sit in front of this laptop, right? So how can you make whatever it is, this habit you're trying to form, how can you add pleasure to it? Next, don't shit on yourself. So if you have committed to a habit because you should do it, you're probably not going to. So ask better questions. If you're looking at the spoke and you're trying to get a different result, ask yourself, what is a habit that I would actually want to do? What would I want to do here? I'll give you a great example for me. I know I need to go to bed on time. I have heard people talk about turning your phone off at a certain time, and I have done it. I really enjoyed, like there was a period of time when I would turn it off from 8 to 8, and that was really great. But here's what I found. I don't want to do that. And so I couldn't get it to stick, this like having my phone off from 8 to 8. I couldn't get it to stick because the truth is I actually don't want to turn my phone off from 8 to 8. And maybe one day I will. I might come back and there's an episode a year from now or 2 years from now and I am like, guys, my life has been changed. I am turning my cell phone off from 8 to 8 and it is just the best thing in my life. I might get there one day, guys, but right now that is not it. I love to put my kids down and scroll because I have unfollowed all of the accounts that do not bring me joy. I enjoy being connected to my friends. A lot of them are actually on. So like 9 p.m. is a great time to text people because the kids are asleep and they can reply back to me. I like having access to my phone at that time. I just do. Okay. So if my goal is to get to bed on time, turning my phone off from 8 to 8 it's probably not, it's something that somebody has shoulded on me, but I don't actually want to do it. So I need different methods. And I have found them for myself, right? For me, the biggest trigger is when I take my supplements. It's like this whole thing. I drink this Calm, it's my magnesium, and I drink all these supplements my doctor has me taking. And then I brush my teeth and I wash my face and I begin my wind down routine, and I will be asleep usually 1 hour from the point I start my routine. So I have to pick my bedtime and then start that, and I'll be asleep an hour later. Well, whatever I do with the phone, that's just like my rhythm, right? So I have curated my own evening routine that puts me to bed on time, but it did not involve giving up my phone because I didn't want to. So don't shit on yourself. Don't pick up some habit because somebody somewhere told you that you should. Find ways to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, doing things you want to do. Next, the behavior needs to be really tiny. Tiny, 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 tiny. Couple of examples here. I've thrown out some generic habits like exercising every day, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water. Those are not actually the habit. They're not small enough. They are not small enough. Go lower. Go deeper. For me to actually commit to exercising, I discovered that the habit wasn't committing to the walk. Like that's where I started, but then I kept not doing it. And so then I had to experiment because again, this is all spaghetti against the wall. So then it was like, well, why am I not showing up? Well, maybe it's because I haven't picked when I'm going to walk. So then it was, okay, I'm going to drop the kids off and then I'm going to go on the walk. Well, then that didn't always work out because sometimes I would be like, oh, I got to go take them really quick. I'll come home, I'll change, and then I'll go back out. And then I never go back out. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. I get distracted. I just jump into my work or I tidy the house or something else. But it doesn't, if I think I'm going to leave the house again, I just don't. So I have to go from the school to the workout. And eventually I realized that the habit was not exercise every day. The habit was not going to walk after you drop the kids off at school. The habit was I will commit to wearing my tennis shoes to school drop off. Because I discovered that if the shoes were on my feet, I would be way more likely to just drive because the park is about 2 minutes or less from my kids' school. And so it's like, even if I don't want to walk, even if I don't feel like it that day, by the time I'm in the car and I've dropped them off and then I look down at my feet and I'm already wearing the tennis shoes and then I have to practically drive past that park to get home, it's like, well, I'm already here and I'm already wearing the shoes. I might as well go on the walk. And I find myself walking. Whether I wanted to or not, inspiration, motivation, all that doesn't matter because I put the shoes on my feet. Look at your habits and think, how do I make this smaller? Bring it down. Next, every habit book that I have read has a different vocabulary word that they use for the idea of, like in Atomic Habits, it's called habit stacking. In BJ Fogg's book, he calls it having a prompt. In The Power of Habit, it was the anchor. Like, you need something to anchor these things down to. So what are you already doing in your life that could signal for you to then do the next thing? Can you combine it with anything? I have discovered for my life, and I have recommended this to many of my clients, and it works for them too. Anything that has to get done every day gets done in the morning rituals or the evening rituals. So I've got like 12 habit stacks. Boom, 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 boom. This is what we do every single morning after we wake up. This is what we do every single evening before we go to bed. This is how I get my supplements in every day. This is how I get my exercise in. This is how I get, I'm trying to think of like I don't know. I wash my face. I brush my teeth. I floss. I drink my like nutrition stuff in the morning. Like all of the right things. It all happens. Bam, 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 bam. They happen all together because I've discovered anything that I think I'm going to do in the middle of the day, it's like, gosh, I'm setting myself for failure. I might do the thing once a week or twice a week. It is just whatever I think I can do every single day. The middle of the day, I just feel like I have so much less control around it. Or I just simply forget. But I do not forget my morning routine and I do not forget my evening routine. So I have habits stacked the hell out of my bookends of my day. And so what I have taught my clients to do is to build these rituals, but for the whole family. So I have now habit stacked my kids. All right, kids, what do you have to have done every day? Whether it is homework or cleaning the room or unloading the dishwasher, like I have habit stacked my kids. We do all these things in the morning before we go to school. We do all of this stuff between, like, it's hit or miss what's going to happen before we do dinner. But once we have sat down to dinner, we are now, the kids even know, we call it, I call it check your list. Because we're going to eat dinner, we're going to clean up the dinner, and then you've got all these things that you got to do before bed, and you've got all these, and the kids, they know, it's like taped in the kitchen. Go check your list. And you have to do all of these things before you go to bed. And I used to call them chores, but I have now changed the charts to say healthy habits because I am ingraining into my kids that these are the things that you do that are healthy for you, that are healthy habits. And it does involve stuff like brushing and flossing, but also reading and picking up your messes and, and tidying and all this stuff that is going to, if they can get these habits formulated from the age of, I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, but like from age 4, you're just, don't even think about it. You just, before you go to bed, you put all your stuff away and you brush your teeth and you floss and you potty and then you go to bed. Like this stuff, it becomes so second nature. Like I am empowering them into adulthood with habits that will serve them forever. Okay, so stacking. Next thing is celebration. This is something that BJ teaches that I love, and that is to just right after the habit, there should be some kind of a joy. And sometimes the habit itself is, right? Like exercise releases endorphins. Drinking enough water, it just gives you more energy and you feel restoration. So some just naturally have them built in, but other things like look for ways to build in celebration or to pause and reward yourself. And then the last thing is to consider your environment. So earlier, I challenged you to ask the question, is there something else in my life that needs to change? And that's what you want to look at. Many of us are really visual people. So I have learned that my habits, whatever I'm trying to implement, I have to have a visual cue. That could be the fact, like, I keep my supplements next to my coffee machine. So like I see the vitamins in the morning where I make my morning beverage. I actually don't have coffee every day. I have these like energy fizz sticks every single day. That's like my morning, like waking me up that I just have loved for a decade now. But sometimes I make coffee, sometimes I make tea, but I have like a whole beverage station, and I go to that part in the morning and I make my drinks. Sometimes I'll have all three. Sometimes I'll have an energy fizz stick and tea and coffee. Thank you, ADHD. Okay. The stimulants calm me down. That is just my world. Okay. This is my brain and I love it and I'm very happy with it and it brings me joy. So there you go. And so all of my vitamins are directly next to all of my beverages I love, because then I'll remember them, because I'm not going to forget my yummy beverages. Like I will not forget those. So then all my vitamins are right next to them. Sometimes you have to rearrange your life. So for example, if you have a Peloton you're never using, well, if you're keeping it in the garage, you're not seeing it. Maybe you need to move it to a different part of the house so you're looking at it more and you're like, oh yeah, I need to use that. You might have to keep it in your actual bedroom. I know people whose Peloton are in their bedroom. That might be what I'm using that example. I don't own one. I would like to own one. My house does not have enough square footage for me to own one. So I'm probably using that as an example because I'm going to manifest that into my life, that my next house will have enough room for me to have some space for a Peloton. But anyways, I digress. Look around your space, and if you have something you're trying to form, how can you set yourself up for success? Let's just use my tennis shoes example. You need to set your shoes by the door. So is the actual habit setting up the visual cue? When I was working on my water habit, I realized that I needed to fill it up the night before and have it on the counter. Oh, this is such a great example. Oh my gosh. The drinking of the water, when I got this one down. This is such a great example of all of these recommendations. So making it fun. First of all, I don't like cold water. So the gallon, I would fill up this gallon, but I would also add like hot water to it, and I would take it to work. And it would be like a lukewarm temperature, which is what I like. But then, I kid you not, shout out to all the people who knew me when I had my office job. They can testify to this. I kept a wine glass that was a goblet-sized wine glass. It probably held 16 to 20 ounces. And I would take the gallon jug and I would pour water into my wine glass. And then I would bring this goblet wine glass to all of my meetings, whether they were one-on-one in my office or at that particular job had a boardroom where I could see, like, one of those boardrooms that can sit like 20 or 25 people. It was like one of those long tables. I had to do meetings in there almost every day. And I would carry my wine glass from my office to this boardroom, and I'd be sitting there. It was like hand painted, all these decorations on it. But drinking my water out of this wine glass, it made me so happy. And then the reactions that people who weren't used to having meetings with me, when they would have a meeting with me for the first time and they would see my wine glass, I would get so much like entertainment and giggles out of people responding to me drinking out of wine glass. Oh my gosh, it just brought me so much joy. But it helped me drink all my water. That little shift, it's a shift in environment, right? The kind of glass I'm using, and then drinking from a wine glass, it brought all this pleasure and all this joy, and it helped me get my water in for the day. By the way, it didn't translate, that habit did not translate at home, because my husband likes to keep the house too cold. I might be digressing, but I'll tell you this quick story. I really like my water room temperature, and my husband likes our house really cold. So my water was getting cold, and then didn't matter whether I had it in this jug. Like, I just didn't want to drink it. So I've discovered that what actually works the best for me is I bought new cups that can hold 20 ounces, like just plastic drinking cups, but they hold 20 ounces. And I have a full glass at all my meals and all my snacks. So instead of 100-gallon ounces, I do my 20-ounce cup 5 times a day. And I don't even have to think about it. It's just second nature. And if you're one of those people, while we're on this water tangent, who's like, how many ounces of water should I drink a day? Listen, there is no number, because somebody who is 5'1" and 105 pounds does not need the same amount of water as somebody who is 6'3" and 250 pounds. Like, there's no recommendation. I like 100 ounces. I feel really good, but I pay attention to things like my urine and the color of it. And if it's too dark, you're not getting enough water. I pay attention to things like my lips. If they're too chapped, I know that I'm dehydrated. I need to increase my water intake. The elasticity of your skin. Like, you can figure out the right number for you. I know for me, if it's in the vicinity of 100 ounces, I'm going to feel good in all of the things. But you got to find the number that works for you. I got off on a rabbit trail. Sorry, guys. Actually, I'm not sorry, because somebody listening to this really appreciated that. And so that was for you, person who wanted to hear about the water. But let's circle all this back, guys. Okay. At the end of the day, this comes down to, what habit do you need to set? Are you making it fun? Do you actually want to do it? Are you stacking it? Are you celebrating yourself? And do you need to make any changes in your environment? Those are the principles that or the summary. That's the BJ Fogg Tiny Habits concept. But it just works. And I've done it 100 times. I had done it 100 times before I ever even read his book. There's just so much truth into it that I wanted to pass it along to you guys. And you want to look at you want to correlate your habits to your favorite wheel, and one by one, it is a slow burn, guys. It's one habit at a time over the course of many years. You figure it out one at a time. Some of these habits are going to take you a couple of days. Some are going to take you a couple of months. But your life today is a reflection of the habits that you've had up to this point. So let's start making some changes, yeah? We're going to replace bad habits with good habits. We're going to make different choices. We're going to add pleasure and fun all over the place, yeah? That's how you achieve your goals. It is. We're going to do an episode on vision boards, but I believe so much in this that I teach my clients when they're making vision boards that they have to also decide what habits are going to help them achieve those goals. And they have to put pictures of that, like things that will remind them about doing those habits. They have to put pictures of the habit itself on the vision board so they visualize themselves doing the habit that's going to take them to the goal. It's powerful stuff. You have to want it, and then you have to also do the work to get there. Thank you, guys. That is it for this week. I appreciate you, and I hope that I achieved my goal, the intention I set at the beginning of this episode, that some sentence at some point today clicked for you, and you're going to write it down, and you're going to pin it up somewhere, and you're going to reflect on these concepts, and you're going to pick one spoke to focus on first, and you're going to pick one habit, and you're going to commit to working on that habit until you're ready for the next one. I love you guys, and I appreciate you being here. I will see you back next week. That's it for today. Thanks for sticking around until the end. Make sure you subscribe or follow so you don't miss future episodes. To connect with me on social media, my Instagram and Facebook handles are @theSophiaHyde. If you're curious about one-on-one coaching, the first step is to book a roadmap session. It's a 1-hour deep dive into your favorite wheel, followed by a 30-minute consultation to see if future coaching sessions would be a good fit for you. To schedule your roadmap session, visit faveself.com. That's veself.com.